Hello, ladies. Welcome back to the Winter Academy, where we help women build better lives with the tools that they already possess. You already possess it. And we are still doing our book series on Iyanla Vanzant, Value in the Valley. Ironically enough, I had just been reading this book and not recording. So I'm like in chapter 3, and I realized that we were still in like chapter 1 or something. So y'all bear with me. So we left off at, what valley did we leave off at? We left off at the Valley of Love. And so we will begin this with the valley. A valley is a ditch. So we'll begin with this valley as the ditch. I will read this last excerpt from the previous Valley of Love. The more you know, the more you are required to know and practice in your day-to-day living. It's the responsibility for me. It's the responsibility for me, right? And there is a responsibility in love. Once you had it, once you've given it, once you've received it in its totality, in its most honest state, there is a responsibility to that, right? There's a responsibility to that feeling. There's a responsibility to that energy. It's a responsibility to ourselves, right? Because once we know we're out of love, you feel different. You feel some type of way, right? So Miss Iyanla goes on to say, the universe of life is really merciful. And if and when we are willing to learn, we will receive our lessons lovingly and gently, right? So we like that firm but fair love, right? Non-abusive, non-abrasive, not that I'm going to have to apologize later type of love, right? When you say something you really shouldn't say and it's not rooted in love, and now you got to wear the egg and apologize and all that kind of stuff, right? Do it lovingly and gently, right? We're the reflection of the universe. We're the reflection of the Creator. And so we want to make sure that we're encompassing what's happening to us. If mercy is being exacted on us, let's have some mercy for some other people, right? In its proper form, though. Miss Iyanla goes on to say, there are those times when what could be a deep valley turns into just a little ditch. This means we are down, but we can see our way up. To stumble does not mean to fall. And so I think when we start talking about how the pressures of the experience, right, can put you into a state where you're like a baby, falling out, having a tantrum. Because, damn it, I don't want to feel this way again. I don't want to bump my head again. I don't want to do this thing again. I don't want to go through this training lesson again, right? But she says that recognizing the difference between stumbling and falling is going to let us know that we can pick it up in certain areas and guarantee that we don't fall. Miss Iyanla then goes on to say that stumbling into a ditch does not render you helpless. There is something for you to grab on or hold on to. Hopefully, it's something you've heard, seen, or learned from the past lesson. Remember when Neo in the Matrix sees the cat for the second time? That's not supposed to happen. But the fact that he recognized it let him know, oh, okay, I'm advancing in this space. I'm aware of what's real and what's not, right? Miss Iyanla goes on to say, a ditch is life's way of reminding you there is something you know, but you're not using, right? So when he recognizes that this cat done came past twice, right, he's starting to use his mind, not the way he was taught to use it, but it was innate. This doesn't feel right. Something's off. He was using his intuition at that moment. Miss Iyanla goes on to say, you need a wake-up call so that you will not repeat the same mistakes. So remember, if Neo decides not to take, what is it, the red pill, then he goes back into the real world. Takes the blue pill, then he gets the truth. We are given a choice when we reach this ditch, right? And she's saying that it's a wake-up call so that we don't repeat the same mistakes. Now, had the man took that red pill, he'd be repeating the same mistakes, right? Forgive me if I got the blue and red pill wrong, but the premise is still the same. If he chooses wrong at this juncture, it pretty much sets the tone for his life, right? If you have mastered yourself and the enlightenment process, you will know there are real dangers which lie ahead. You must be very careful. You will be required to make some hard decisions. Most important, you must be able to act on what you know. I just had this conversation with my daughter. She's 18 years old, and we're talking about autonomy and being able to stand up for yourself and putting yourself first enough to know when you're being handled, right? So the way in which you want to be handled versus the way a person will willingly handle you are two different things. And if you're not cognizant enough, or like she says, enlightened enough, enlightened through the process, you won't recognize those real dangers, right? Because there's always a sign before it happens, right? Miss Iyanla goes on to say, if you cannot or do not recognize the signs, employ the process. A ditch will very quickly turn into a valley, right? So this is about course correction immediately. So the best way that I can give an example of this is like, say for instance, you're doing something and you mess up and you'd be like, oh man, I'm so dumb. The way in which you talk to yourself. It is a great course corrector. How you talk to yourself inside of you. Okay? That has the ability to turn a mole into a mountain hill. Because if you recognize, oh, I'm dumb in this space, then you're going to start looking for it everywhere else. And you literally just put yourself in a valley when you were probably just in a ditch. Okay? No man knows all things. So don't put that type of pressure on yourself, right? Miss Iyanla goes on to say that we may stumble into another ditch when we profess we have learned our lessons. Doing that know-it-all too. And I'm present company included. I miss know-it-all, right? And so there are lessons that have to be learned. But if we feel we've learned all the lessons we need to learn, that's when we find ourselves in a goddamn valley, right? Miss Iyanla goes on to say, to test your level of mastery, the universe may send to you an identical or similar situation. The temptation will be great. The core or underlying issue will be the same. So this is that familiarity that we were talking about, right? When we are tested to see if we'll do the new thing or keep bumping our heads with the insanity doing the old thing, it will be tempting, right? It will show up as glistening and shiny, the new thing, right? But she goes on to remind us that the core or underlying issue is always the same. It's the same lesson, you guys. It's the same lesson. Miss Iyanla then goes on to state, spirit will not lie to you. When things are right in your spirit, you will be at peace. No peace, no spirit. It may be time for you to pull back and watch. Gather more information before you move ahead. At any cost, when you are in doubt, pray. If you have truly learned your lesson, you will recognize your pattern and retreat. The ditch has broken your fall. You are not dead. And so the reason why Miss Iyanla wants us to know She used a specific term called spirit. So that is that innate energy in us. It is the core aspect of us. It is our first mind, right? It is the discernment. It is the God body. It's the thing that connects us to source or spirit or universe, God, right? And so this is why when we're in doubt, we pray. So we calling in like, hey, listen, this ain't working for me. Can y'all send somebody, right? And so we are acknowledging our connection to the Creator when we take a minute and we listen for instructions, right? What is my next move? What makes the most sense? What is the most reasonable action for me to take? And then we're quiet. We look and we listen. But there has to be a moment in time where you pause. And I know a lot of people are so enthralled in their day-to-day that they feel like they can't pause. But remember, I use the word feel, right? You can change your feelings. Miss Iyanla also states that at any cost, whenever in doubt, that we pray. And that if we truly have learned the lesson, we will recognize the patterns and retreat. So when you are around someone that gets you riled up, they don't bring out the best in you. When you feel that anger coming up from right here, it's coming up. It's coming up. When you feel that shaking, you get that frog in your throat and you tempered and your lips are tight and pursed and you speaking through your teeth, it's time to retreat because that person is about to get you to fall off. We know that as, somebody getting you off your square, right? But when you fall off that square, you fall into a dangum ditch or a valley. And so she's asking us to retreat. This ditch has broken our fall. We're not dead. There's nothing wrong with us. We're not out the game yet. And so when we can begin to recognize and pull ourselves back and say, hey, that person is on the block list. I don't go to that place anymore. I don't talk like that. I don't do that anymore. And you stand in it. That's a great way for you to not miss the message or miss the lesson. Miss Iyanla goes on to state that women who never admit to themselves or anyone else that there's even the slightest possibility that they've made a mistake, a poor choice, or unwise decision is spiritually declined. She goes on to say, it's just, they simply can never be wrong, right? She goes on to say they continue to do things their way over and over again, getting exactly the same results. That's that insanity, right? That's also the lesson not being learned, right? And that's also not that connection with the Most High or strengthening the connection with the Most High, right? Miss Iyanla goes on to say they refuse to admit. They do not get the point. The point being, the point being that if they really knew what to do, they would have already done it. If we know what to do, we would have already done it. The confusion that we have is typically confusion that we bring to ourselves. Or the fact that we're not asking questions, raising our hand, seeking, right? Miss Iyanla goes on to say they need to be right, coupled with the fear of being wrong. Can you imagine that? Let's just let that statement soak in. The point is they want to be right at any cost. They need to be right, coupled with the fear of being wrong. So me and my friend have this term called confidently wrong. So it's like when someone's loud and obnoxious and they're stating their point and it's wrong, extremely wrong, right? And so being loud and wrong, it's a double whammy because not only are you bringing visibility to yourself with the loud projection of your voice, but you're also wrong in the content, right? And so it's just so funny to see this because when you're the leader, when you're the head, right? Being able to say that you're wrong, being able to apologize and pinpoint the moment when you recognize, oh, I was out of pocket. That's spiritual growth. That's expansion. That is the connection to the Most High, right? Miss Iyanla goes on to say, I think I'm going to turn this ring light down some. It is kind of bright. Miss Iyanla goes on to state that you argue for and hold on to the very things which limit your ability to grow. And that's what we were just talking about. If we were looking forward to growth and expansion, then admitting when you're wrong, admitting that you haven't done things the best way, and just acknowledging it. No one's saying that you have to castigate yourself and forever punish yourself, but just be aware of your blind spots. Be aware of when you were wrong and how you've wronged others. Because what we put out, we receive. So if I don't plan on being wronged, I don't want to wrong anyone. And that's not to negate that there's just a natural causality of, what did Eddie Murphy call it? Necessary evil, right? So this is the aspect of balance of life, right? You have a negative charge, you have a positive charge. That's just natural in nature, right? So we're not saying that bad things won't happen to you, but you don't want to be the direct cause of it. Now, if this is just something that is in the air and it just so happens, right?